tributes have been pouring in for Jimmy Carter the last couple of days, and that's been nice to see because he was such a punchline for so many years, for so many decades, really. He was mocked as a one-term president. He was the guy who lost to Reagan. He was the malaise president. He was the inflation president. He was the president who admitted that he had lusted in his heart, right? He was kind of made fun of a lot and treated as a joke. But in more recent years, he has been rediscovered and reassessed and given, I think, more of a fair shake from historians and scholars and pundits and just regular folks like me and you, presumably. I'm not sure how many scholars and academics watch my YouTube channel, but I'm going to guess you're not the majority, but thanks for being here nonetheless. And it's been nice to see the tributes to Jimmy Carter pouring in. It's been nice to see people appreciating him because I really feel like he deserved better from us as a nation than we gave him, which is not to say he was perfect. And I know as soon as I say anything complimentary about any president, there's a bunch of folks that are raring to go to type in their comment and list all of the fucking horrible things that Jimmy Carter was responsible for or complicit in or whatever. And look, I'm not going to tell you not to do that. That's completely fair. We have presidents. We don't have kings. We shouldn't idolize our leaders, even the relatively good ones. We should look at them in full, warts and all. So if you hear me say that Jimmy Carter, on balance, was a pretty good president for us, and you feel the need to share all of the shitty things that he did or that he took part in, please feel free to do that. I'm not telling you not to. But in this moment, immediately following the man's death, I feel more motivated to express appreciation for him, to express admiration for him, and to express, I don't even know how to say it, wonderment at the fact that he held on for as long as he did. And when I say that, I'm not referring to the entire 100 years of his life. I'm not even referring to the last 40 or so years of his life that account for his post-presidency. I'm referring to just like the last month and a half. Because before Election Day, there were stories in the press, and I don't know, I mean, maybe these were just rumors, maybe they were true, but there were stories in the press that were supposedly coming from Jimmy Carter's family where they were saying that, you know, Jimmy Carter, he had been in a bad way for a very long time. He had been in hospice care at home for a really, really long time for hospice. Like if you've ever had a close relative or a friend who has been in hospice care, you know that hospice usually doesn't last very long. I mean, that's kind of the point of it. It's end of life care. So if you have someone who has been in hospice for longer than maybe a few months, like that's probably an extraordinary circumstance. And Jimmy Carter was in hospice care for over a year and he hung on. And there came the stories that, well, he's just trying to hang on long enough so he can vote in the next election. And when Kamala Harris became the Democratic nominee, there was the story of, well, Jimmy Carter is hanging on just long enough so that he can vote for Kamala Harris. He wants to cast his final vote for Kamala Harris to become the first woman and also the first woman of color to be the president of the United States. And like I said, I don't know if those stories are true, but if they are, and if that indeed was Jimmy Carter's motivation for hanging on to life for as long as he did, given the election result, it is amazing to me that he died just a couple of days ago as opposed to like the day after Election Day. Because if I was Jimmy Carter, and I think we can all be very grateful that I am not, but, and not just because he's dead, by the way, because he was president and you would rather, trust me, you'd rather have Jimmy Carter as the president than me. But if I were Jimmy Carter and I were 100 years old and living in hospice care and I had said, I'm going to hang on long enough to vote in this next election so I can vote for the first woman of color to be the president of the United States. And then I did that. And then she lost the election for, among other reasons, but for one of the main reasons being that a bunch of other Democrats and progressives and liberals just didn't fucking vote this time. If that had happened and I was in Jimmy Carter's place, I'm checking out the next day. I'm going out like this. I'm going, okay, have fun, everybody. I did what I said I was going to do. I did my part. I hung on at the age of 100. I tried to die as slowly as possible so that I could vote for Kamala Harris and win this election. And apparently not enough of you felt like it was important enough to join me in that effort. So see ya. Oh, that would have been me. That would have been me. I would have died like as soon as I heard the election result, and I would have gone out and given the world the finger, because fuck that. Fuck that. I'm not saying that all the people who would have voted for Kamala Harris but didn't vote should have voted for her only because Jimmy Carter voted for her. But I am saying that Jimmy Carter voting for her in his condition at his age, even if all he did was fill out an absentee ballot, 100-year-old man who has been dying at home for over a year, propped his ass up in bed and filled out a ballot and signed it so he could vote in the election. And if you didn't even bother to do that, I'm sorry, you have no excuses. Jimmy Carter managed to vote and you didn't. So you are completely without excuse. And you know what? Maybe in a way, that's the last gift that Jimmy Carter gave to me personally. Obviously, he didn't know me. He didn't give it to me personally, but I can claim it personally. And it's not just to me, it's to all of my fellow whiny, belly-aching, aggrieved progressives and liberals and people on the leftish side of the spectrum. All of us who are really, really, really fucking annoyed with all of our fellow progressives who didn't vote this time for whatever reason, or who didn't vote for the Democratic candidate. It gives all of us a gift, because now we have something that we can latch onto and never let go of. Whenever anybody complains about the election of Donald Trump in 2024, we can always point to the fact that a whole bunch of Democrats and progressives and liberals, et cetera, all of the people on our side didn't vote. And yet somehow 100-year-old on death's door Jimmy Carter managed to do it. So, right? We have something that we can never, ever, ever let them forget and let them live down. And when you come from a proud line of complainers like me, the Shiveses, in case you don't know, the Shiveses, at least my particular branch of the Shiveses, we have a proud tradition of complaining. We're complainers. I know for some of you that might be hard to believe when I say that about myself. You'd be like, no, Steve, not you. Not you. Surely not. Yes, it's true. It's a proud family tradition in my family. We are complainers. I come from a long line of complainers. And for complainers like me, that's a gift. That's a gift that Jimmy Carter gave us in doing what he did on Election Day, voting for Kamala Harris, and then passing away shortly thereafter. Again, not as soon as I would have if it had been me, because I would have been gone like ASAP. And you would have heard me go. Like you would have heard me go. And it would have not been pretty. But yeah, he gave us that gift. He gave us a gift that we were not deserving of. And I feel like that's something that can kind of speak for his entire presidency and his post-presidency life. He was better than we deserved. Again, like I said at the beginning, he wasn't perfect. And you can talk all you want about all the shit he did that he shouldn't have done and all the things that he did that other presidents have also done, and why he wasn't an angel and he wasn't a saint, and I'm not trying to say that he was. But when you look back at his presidency, for all of its faults, for all of its shortcomings, for all the things that he did that he shouldn't have done, all of the things that he didn't do that maybe he should have done, here's a guy who put solar panels on the White House And then one of the first things that Ronald Reagan did when he moved in there was take those solar panels down. And if there is a more perfect microcosm of American history taking the wrong turn, I don't know what it is. We had Jimmy Carter, and we cashed him in exchange for Ronald fucking Reagan. And 44 years later, here we are. Here we sit. So it's nice to see the tributes pouring in for Jimmy Carter. It's nice to see people showing some appreciation for him, showing appreciation for not just his presidency, but for all of the things he did in the decades that he lived after his presidency, his volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, his work around the world in eradicating disease, eradicating hookworm specifically, which he devoted a lot of time and effort to, his work as kind of an unofficial diplomat. He would go off to other countries and be like an election observer. And he was often called upon by succeeding presidents to fill certain roles in the government on a limited and temporary capacity to negotiate hostage releases and things like that. He gave a lot more than he got. He gave a lot more than he got. And it's nice to see people paying tribute to him and remembering him fondly and with, appreciation and thanks and gratitude in the aftermath of his death. And it's good that we do that. It's good that we remember Jimmy Carter as a president, as a human being, as a former president, as someone who used his stature as a former president to do a lot of good in the world, to do more good in the world, I think, than most, if not all, other presidents have done since they left office. Like his post-presidency, he really made that count. And his presidency, especially in light of the many of the presidencies that followed it, wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of people thought it was at the time. So let's remember Jimmy Carter, not just because he was a good man, mostly, certainly an above average man in terms of goodness when you consider other people who have held the office of the president. Remember him for that. And remember him not because he was ideal, because he wasn't. Not because he was perfect as a statesman or just as a human being, because he wasn't. But remember him as an example and a reminder that we all could use, especially now, that it's worth trying to do good in the world, and that no matter how hard it may be to believe at any given moment, better things are possible.